All right, guys, so while there is the news of the Golden Globes themselves, and we will certainly talk about them and what the Golden Globes nominations and wins mean and what they imply for the Oscars going forward, but there are also a lot of auxiliary stories that came out of the Golden Globes as well. And one of them, we'll talk about Colin Farrell coming up, and we'll talk about, again, the Golden Globes themselves, but one of them is KATHRYN HAHN. KATHRYN HAHN, who was nominated, I believe, in the Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy Series for her role as Agatha Harkness in Agatha All Along, which, I enjoyed the series for what it was. I think she was on a red carpet interview, and they asked her, they said, what do you think about doing Agatha season 2? Is it going to happen? And she gave some quotes here that, look, it's that kind of gray area where could it mean nothing at all? Sure. It could absolutely mean nothing at all. However, could this be hinting at something? Maybe. And so I wanted to read these quotes out loud here, and then we can talk about whether or not it means anything. Again, could mean nothing at all. But, I think it's fun to read these comments and see what she has to say. So, KATHRYN HAHN on the red carpet, and here's an article that has all the quotes. So here's the first one. She says, quote, "Am I personally done with playing this witch? No," she says. That's the first quote, okay? Pretty straightforward. However, it's worth pointing out that she's not the one in control of whether or not she gets to play Agatha again. There is also the matter of the ending of season 1 of Agatha All Along, if it is season 1, the ending of season 1 of Agatha All Along being pretty open-ended. So there is that. So if she's not done playing the character and if Kevin Feige wants her back, then sure, she can come back. So that's the first quote. Second quote here is in response to a question, one that we ourselves have asked on this channel, actually, and it's talking about the fact that Agatha All Along was submitted not in the limited series category, which limited series would indicate that Agatha All Along was a one and done kind of a show, just one season was planned and nothing else, but instead it was submitted in the comedy series, which I think the stipulations of the Golden Globe rules are that if you are to be submitted in that category, it suggests that you are or planning on or have ideas, or I don't know the exact rules, but there is some notion that there is going to be another season of the show. Very interesting. In fairness, though, to my knowledge, if you're submitted in the limited series, I don't think that precludes you from, at a later point, greenlighting a season 2. If you know the answer to that, let me know in the comments below, because that's from my understanding. But either way, it's still interesting that Marvel would submit the show in the comedy series. And so the reporter asks KATHRYN HAHN about that, and this is what she says. Quote, "It does suggest that." Han conceded when, asked about the fact that it suggests that there's going to be season 2. Quote, "I am as in the dark as you are. There's going to be a Vision show, so that could be of a trilogy with Agatha All Along and WandaVision is what she's referring to. Quote, but who knows?" Okay, so look. So first of all, let's address the first quote here. Am I done playing this witch? No. So obviously, like I said, does that mean anything necessarily? No, because if Kevin Feige was like, yeah, we had a great run with Agatha All Along and we're just going to shut it down, KATHRYN HAHN herself has no real say in that. And that's totally fine. It's just how the movie industry works. However, there are a lot of contributing factors going to this being a very positive sign, because it seems like if you were Kevin Feige and if you were in his position, all signs point to the fact that yes, absolutely, of all the shows that you have going on, and Daredevil Born Again, to be fair, first season hasn't even released yet. It's coming out in 2 months, by the way, which is crazy. I'm super excited for that. But, of all the shows that are coming out, right, you would greenlight a season 2 of Agatha All Along for a couple of reasons. Number one, it did critically pretty well. It's one of the shows that the critics were like, hey, it's pretty good, right? And look, for the MCU, that's unfortunately a pretty low bar to clear, but it is a bar nonetheless. You have shows like Echo and Secret Invasion recently, and even other shows like Falcon and Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk. Not since WandaVision has there been a show where you had, universal acclaim, and Agatha All Along wasn't nearly the kind of acclaim that WandaVision had, but still, it was a very positively received show. On top of that, number two is that the viewership numbers steadily increased every single episode. If those two things are not the recipe to greenlight a season 2, especially because the end of season 1 was fairly open-ended, in fact, I would argue frustratingly so open-ended, because the ending was just kind of like, hey, let's go on another adventure to find Tommy. Fine, whatever. But, I would argue that Kevin Feige would be kind of silly not to greenlight a season 2. And I'm not talking about Kevin Feige himself, but just any executive would be kind of silly to not greenlight a season 2 and see if they couldn't capitalize on that positive momentum. So I think KATHRYN HAHN being game to come back is definitely a good thing. Now, to the second quote there, is the fact that, KATHRYN HAHN is mentioning on red carpets the Vision show, and the fact that she knows about it. Does that mean she has a little cameo in the Vision show or anything like that? Not necessarily, right? I don't think that this is, we should all be jumping up and down saying Ghost Agatha's gonna be in Vision, and Vision's gonna secretly be about, nothing about Vision. It's gonna be about finding Tommy instead. I don't necessarily think that's what's going on here. Now, does that preclude her from showing up in the Vision show? No, not at all. I think that, I'd give it at this point maybe a 15% chance. I don't think that that's out of the question at all. But I don't think that, what she says here, and what she says is interesting, right? It's not just the fact that she's like, oh, there is a Vision show. She is almost directly paraphrasing or directly quoting that Hollywood Reporter article, I believe, that said something like, yeah, WandaVision, Agatha All Along, and Vision were intended to be a kind of trilogy. So whether or not, she saw that article and was like, oh, what a cool idea. Whether or not that is something internally that the, Jack Schaefer was talking about, that Kevin Feige had told KATHRYN HAHN, maybe Kevin Feige was just like, hey, really good of you to be a part of the second part of this trilogy of shows that we're doing. And then that was it. Maybe, right? But the fact that she is in the know somewhat about this Vision show is definitely a good thing. So again, I think here, do these two quotes mean that a season 2 is definitely coming? No, not at all. Would I be on the side of, if you're going to do the coin flip, 50-50 or whatever, like, would I be on the side of yes or no, show is coming, second season is coming, second season is not coming? I would definitely be on the side of a second season is coming. Because again, if you're just looking at this, the signs are just building on top of one another. No single sign in isolation is enough to say a second season is coming, but all of them starting to stack on top of each other. KATHRYN HAHN being like, well, I want to come back, and KATHRYN HAHN being like, yeah, there is the Vision show, and maybe, it could be a part of that. And then, obviously all the signs of the viewership. And also, I should just mention, we should have mentioned this at the very top, the fact that KATHRYN HAHN is at the Golden Globes because she was nominated for a Golden Globe for Agatha Harkness. And again, it's not necessarily like, oh, you get nominated for, whatever, and you get to be, you get to have a second season, or you get to have a sequel automatically. That's not necessarily what happens. Like, a bunch of Marvel movies are nominated for, just as an example, I know that visual effects and acting categories are not equivalent at all in terms of, just sort of status or whatever. But, I mean, Marvel films are nominated for visual effects all the time, right? So it's not a guarantee that you get sequels and whatnot. But it is definitely a good sign. So I would think that, again, we are still getting more and more signs that an Agatha All Along Season 2 is coming. But I want to ask you guys, do you think an Agatha All Along Season 2 is coming? Or do you think that this is all just kind of her being like, yeah, I'd love to come back, but we'll see. Let me know in the comments down below.